Greetings from the back seat of the DroneOCan mobile. We are down here in the Crow's Nest Pass, in the shadow of the mountains and in the shadow of Tim Hortons, the restaurant that foreigners think is pure Canadiana, but Canadians love to hate on now. Yes, it's quite funny how, just like Nickelback and music, everyone claims to hate Tim Hortons, yet everywhere you go, the Tim Hortons drive-thru and parking lots are full, just like every Nickelback concert sells out. Just making a little roadside stop here at the Rampart Rest Area along Highway 3 in southern BC. Just needed to get out and stretch a little bit. There's actually like a 6.5 kilometer hiking loop here that I was not previously familiar with. And it's funny, I picked this rest area for a specific reason, and that is because as a kid, whenever we would do road trips to Creston on the weekends, we always stopped at the Rampart Rest Area. I've got photos of my grandmother and my mother and my sister here, taken, in the late 1970s, and I don't think too much has probably changed since then. And if memory serves me correctly, this was kind of always our picnic table, a little ways off from the parking area. I think it was a wooden table back in those days, though, of course. Not the fancy concrete one we have there now. Well, having shared the family tradition of Rampart Rest Area with you, it's time for me to share another family tradition. And that's, well, actually this isn't so much a family tradition, this is a DroneOCan tradition. So I'm standing here, just steps away from a very busy Highway 3, but I always have to pull over and capture the Moyie Fire Hall. Absolutely amazing building, and it's on the DroneOCan bucket list of places I would love to get into one day. Made the quick run across the highway. Obviously the grading has changed a lot since this was in use, since there'd really be no way to get out of those doors and out onto the road with the way things are currently set up. 1907. Try and kind of shield things so you can get a little look inside. Not much in this window. And I don't know if we'll be able to see anything. This window's really dirty. No, I can't show you much of anything inside, although there is a hose wagon in there that I can see. Pot-belly stove. And yes, I realize I haven't told you yet why we are on our way to Creston. In fact, I don't even know if I've told you we're on our way to Creston, but we are on our way to Creston, BC for a very special reason. We've been on the road for about 4.5 hours already. We've got a little less than an hour to go, so I'll catch up with you once we get there. So yes, we have made it to Creston. I forgot we actually cross into the Pacific time zone, so we gained an hour coming this way. We'll lose it on the way home. So we've been on the road about 6 hours, 6.5 hours, maybe? Yeah, that's about right. 6.5 hours to do 500 some kilometers. But I'll bet you, I can't see the screen right now, but I'll bet you can see why we're here. So in an area that's more known for tourism and fruit stands, you wouldn't expect to see a grain elevator, never mind 2 of them. And I hope you don't expect to see 2 of them for long, because the one in the background, the white U.G.G, is in the process of being deconstructed, as they so nicely put it, which is just code for demolished. I know Mabel is excited. She gets out of the car again. Emily's always excited. So naturally, I wanted to come down, get some pictures of the grain elevators, capture some drone footage. Now this is a tough area to drone in. I've got multiple power lines all around. I've got the main highway just running through on the right side of the elevator there. And I've got this road here in the foreground. So I have to be careful to not fly over cars or people. So I'm going to focus mainly from shooting on this side where the train tracks are, because that gives me the most room and margin for error. So the Alberta wheat pool in the foreground has been restored and actually is used currently as an art gallery. And you know, as it comes to conservation efforts, the funds just weren't there to save the U.G.G. So you can see it's all boarded up currently. Pretty bad shape, hasn't been repainted in a long time, and is destined to meet its fate here any time now. Previously on the channel, I told you about the Wendell grain elevator, which was just north of Creston, and how a breakdown of my Jeep allowed me to get stranded there, or stranded in Radium for the weekend, and I made a special trip to come down here to see the grain elevators, and then discovered that the Wendell grain elevator got demolished later that year. So it's kind of nice. There used to be 3 elevators in this area. We're down to 2, soon only to be 1. But time's a-wasting, so let's get the drone up in the air and get some footage. So I just powered up DroneOCan. Gonna give it some time here to acquire a good solid GPS signal. Good spot here next to the car. Shouldn't be anybody coming and parking here. And the other nice thing is that there's no power lines immediately above me. So we should have a good takeoff zone here as soon as it gets signal and ready for departure. So when we were at home, I quickly punched in our location into the Nav Drone app and checked the airspace here, and I'm good to go. Like I said, as long as I obey the rules about flying over people and over vehicles and things like that. And in rare DroneOCan fashion, I actually remembered a connection cable to connect to the controller to the iPad. I actually have everything charged and ready to go. So I don't think I've forgotten anything on this trip. I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but the controller is giving me an NFZ limit, no flight zone. And I'm not sure quite why. Like I said, I checked Nav Drone and this was good to go at this location. So I'm just connecting the iPad to Wi-Fi to see what's going on. And I know those reflections are really bad and you won't be able to see much here. But according to Nav Drone, I should be good to go. I'm gonna see if it'll let me take off or what happens here. Okay, so according to the DJI Go 4 app, I'm just kind of in this gray zone. It says I have an altitude limit of 60 meters. That shouldn't be a problem. So I'm gonna stay within that. We should be okay. Let's see what happens. had one close call with the power lines when I was in active track mode, where it follows a set course and I can spin the camera around. I was a little bit lower than I thought I was. I mean, it looked bad on camera. I was probably still a few feet above the power lines anyway, but close call, no issues. So as I believe I hinted earlier in the video, there are two reasons why I wanted to come to Creston. And number one was the elevator. Number two is the story of the Craigellachie Kid. Now, I've heard it pronounced Craigellachie and Craigellachie or some other variations, but I'm going with Craigellachie just because that's what I grew up saying and it just flows the most naturally for me. So who was the Craigellachie Kid? Well, if you know Canadian history at all, the name Craigellachie will immediately make you think of the last spike in the Canadian Pacific Railway, because Craigellachie was where the last spike was driven on November the 9th, 1885. And if you've heard of the last spike and you know about it, you've undoubtedly seen the photo of Donald Smith of the Canadian Pacific Railway driving the last spike at Craigellachie. Now, what makes it interesting is in that photograph, there is a young man standing immediately behind Donald Smith, and he is not supposed to be there. And that's what makes it such an interesting story. Is, you know, you've got all these company bigwigs, William Van Horn, Donald Smith, Sanford Fleming, and then this 18-year-old kid. It's probably the most famous photograph in Canadian history. November the 7th, 1885. I think I said November the 9th earlier. 9:22 a.m. The nation is united by a ribbon of steel. The photograph is taken by Alexander Ross, who is actually buried in Calgary's Union Cemetery, and I'll have to show you his grave in a future video. But enough about the bigwigs and the famous names. The kid in the photograph that I alluded to was named Edward Mallandaine, and he was just 18 years old at the time, and he had only arrived in Craigellachie the night before. And somehow this 18-year-old kid, who had no connection whatsoever to the CPR, managed to push his way up through the crowd of dignitaries and laborers and get right in behind Donald Smith exactly when the last spike was being driven. And you can tell right from his stance and the look on his face, that is one self-satisfied smile. Now, in adulthood, Edward Mallandaine would go on to help found the town of Creston, BC, and he's actually buried here in town. So let's go see if we can find his grave. Okay, so we have parked outside Pioneer Cemetery, and we're just going to pop in and look for Block 1, Plot 19. Sign at the entrance says dogs prohibited in the cemetery, so Emily is going to wait with Mabel while I go on a hunt. Now, it's not a very big cemetery, which is good, because there's no map showing me any of the plots or things. And it's quite funny, I didn't really need a map. This giant plot here with the sinking concrete, not right in the middle, but in a very prominent spot. And who do we have here? Edward Mallandaine, August 3rd, 1949. Right next to him is his wife, Jean, December the 11th, 1943. So yeah, there he lies, Edward, the 18-year-old kid who forced his way into the most famous photograph in Canadian history. And his grave is here in Creston, BC. Pretty peaceful little cemetery here, actually. Nestled in the mountains here in Creston. Now, I'm not intending to do a deep dive into Edward's life and how he became associated with Creston and the founding of the town. That's some topic for another video, and you can probably find all that information online. This was just a little quick detour to check out an interesting tidbit of history. So if you want the history, go read it. You're not going to find it here. And this nice quiet spot surrounded by the trees and the birds is as good a place as any to say thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.